Welcome to the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, founder of Expansive CEO and X Squared Wealth Planning. Buckle in as we explore how to create true prosperity and build a business and a life that expands beyond yourself and makes a dent in the universe. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Expansive CEO podcast. I am your host, Hannah Chapman, and today I have got 3-time guest speaker with me here and 9 times TEDx speaker, the incomparable Blake Fleischiker, who we lovingly call Blake Fly around here. So Blake, I'm so happy, truly, for you to be back for the 3rd time here on the podcast, because we have so much to talk about and because you've got some new stuff going on. So before, we've talked about speaking, we've talked about how to engage with people in a creative way, which you are like phenomenally brilliant at, total rock star. And now you're taking that rock star status and starting something a little bit new that's super close to your heart. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. And I want to turn it over to you to introduce yourself a little bit more and to, tell people what we're talking about today.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm thrilled about this conversation because I feel like every time I've had a conversation with you on a podcast or elsewhere, you build these containers for people to just explore their own stories, ideas, perspectives, and it's just a blast to talk with you. So thanks for the invite back and to sort of catch people up to speed, whether they've heard my voice once, twice, or never. You alluded to it a little bit. Once we talked about the speaking world, the speaking business, the art of speaking. Once we talked about these creative, unique, unexpected ways to engage people in business or in life. And this sort of next chapter that I'm in now is a blend of those worlds with a dash of the biggest world for me, which is, as a family man, I've always been wired that way. Like in grade 8, I wrote in my grade 8 yearbook, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wrote husband, dad, and Zamboni driver for the NHL. 2 of those 3 things are taken care of. Got to get that Zamboni goal done. But the conversation is going to revolve around entrepreneurial parenthood. So yes, I speak from a place of entrepreneurial dad life, but for anyone tuned in who is entrepreneurial, has a family, really these themes of how can you create meaningful moments, memories, experiences, conversations with your kids, and not even just with your kids, but just in the arena of your life that is beyond just business. And so we're actually going to keep talking about some speaking things, some creative engagement things, but today through the lens of family and beyond.
I'm so happy to have this topic on the podcast because a lot of listeners know that I do have kids. I have 3. My oldest daughter's 13. My middle child is my son. He's 11. And my youngest is another daughter, and she's 9. And I don't, as we were talking before we started recording, I don't talk about or post on social media about my kids very often anymore. I did a lot when they were very little. But as they've gotten older and, the social media landscape has changed a lot, I've just been holding them a little bit closer to my heart,
Yeah.
right? And as far as, that's not any judgment on anyone for how they post or don't post their kids online. But just for me, it felt more like I wanted to keep a little bit more of a barrier for them for their privacy. But at the same time, entrepreneurship and parenthood are both humongous undertakings. And when I
Yeah.
started X Squared, I really it's like X Squared is like my 4th baby, right?
Mm.
Is what it has really felt like. And then a year after that, I started Expansive CEO. So there's 5. So we've got a whole gaggle. Um, but it's these worlds and bringing them together and creating, I don't like the word balance necessarily, but
Mm.
intentionality around how you're connecting with
Yeah.
your family and still like building a business that supports your family and meets your needs as a human being, right? All of those things are so important to me, and I know that you have also put a lot of intention into your parenthood journey as well. So
Mm.
tell us about your family, and remind us about your kids and how old they are
Yeah.
and all that too.
Yeah. At the time of this recording, the family photo is myself, Blake, my beautiful bride, Emily. We've been married for coming up on 6 years in the summertime. And we have two sweet little ones. Our son, Koa, he's currently 3. And our daughter, Summer, she's currently 2. So at the time of this recording, deep toddler fest over here where we're tuned in from. And as I'm talking today, I want to make sure that I definitely contextualize the fact that even though in many ways my work has involved like family and kids and parenthood when I speak and talk about things, I'm passionately not a parenting expert. I think I'm passionately under siege right now in learning parenthood and business and balancing it all. And since becoming a dad just over 4 years ago, I feel like I've sort of been taking hits in the face in a great way of like, whoa, it's a blender and it's beautiful and like need to upgrade pretty much every fiber of my being to actually like be present to this journey.
Hmm. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Deep toddlerhood is the best way to put that. I
I just see
remember
like a
those days.
road sign. It's like welcome to deep toddlerhood. And there's like spilled smoothie cups and like a half parked plastic car. Yeah.
Random screaming. You have to like listen if it's like happy or about to
Yeah.
turn into like danger,
Right.
right? Yes. Yes, I've been there so much. And it really does shift and change over time too, right? Like my youngest being 9 now is like the the shift that I've experienced in how I relate to my kids, right, is really cool. And at the same time, I can see now all of the effort that my husband and I put into them in those
Yeah.
toddler years, like how important it was to really connect with them and to make them feel safe and to make them feel loved and to make them feel, supported, all of that. It's starting to really show up in how
Mm.
they treat others. That has been the biggest thing for me is when I see them treating each other with kindness. There's fighting still, but when if
Yeah.
someone else tries to mess with them, or if, one of the siblings is like upset with one, like the third one will come in and be like, "Hey," like, come to
Yeah.
defense. The way that they love and respect each other and um usually extend that out to others as well.
Mm.
That is what, like, the kindness for me, if my legacy in this lifetime is to leave a legacy of kindness and have that be also through my children and how they treat others and treat the world, that to
Yeah.
me is one of the, like, most important things that I can
Mm.
do in my whole life.
Well said, Hannah. Huh. I'm seeing that form in our world more and more. In our household, I'm starting to see that. Just yesterday, I was saying to Emily, we were driving around in the car, the four of us. Like, oh my gosh, I actually feel like now when we go on car rides as a family, we've entered that phase where I sort of feel like we're picking up two friends who happen to be kids, but like they're brother and sister. Like a friendship is now forming. And as you say, yeah, they like push each other around and wish the other was not present for periods of time. Just like, get out of my face, sibling. But like a genuine, excitable friendship is forming between our kids who are currently 3 and 2. And it's really wild to witness how sometimes I sort of feel like now instead of just being like the full on entertainment for them, now sometimes I feel like I almost need to ask like, hey, you two, like, could I participate as well? Because they're having a blast with each other. It's really special.
That's what they say, right? Like when you have a sibling, hopefully, if it's fostered that way, like that you can have a friend for life.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, it's so, so special to see. So I want to make sure, for our audience here, like most of us are entrepreneurs or business owners in some way. And so this aspect of like it's just so much to do. And depending on where you are in your parenthood journey, right? Like what age your kids are, and then also where you're at in your business journey, right? This can be like super intense. And I would say, especially toddlerhood under 5 and unders, like that's a really intense time of parenthood. And if you have a business that you're also growing, right, that's another, like that's a lot of intensity all jam packed in one. Um, I actually have a pair of clients who I love dearly, who have kids about, well, a little older than yours, maybe like 6 and 4. Right, so
Yeah.
just a little bit older, but still in that really intense parenting stage, and we're also growing a business at the same time, and it caused so
Mm,
much stress for them, and I could see from my seat as their financial advisor, like, there needs to be there's gotta be some relief somewhere, there's more support is needed, like, I could see it
right.
very clearly, and
Right.
so how do you, again, no, we're not parenting experts. We're not claiming to be. I haven't written any books on parenting. Just been through it and going through it. How do you currently experience that? And not necessarily manage like, hey, like it's all going perfect, but how do you manage that? What matters to you when you're thinking
Yeah.
about that balance?
Well, I would say that literally I'm in the phase right now as a parent where those conversations are now becoming more available, meaning it's no longer moment to moment parenting for the first couple of years, at least our experience. Now it's a little bit of, oh, okay, what what do we want to create, whether it be supports in place, or do we want to actually create some time and space where we have like meaningful one-on-one experiences with each of our kids? Because I literally feel like we're still kind of just recent, almost maybe sort of graduates of the just breath to breath season of parenthood. And also a unique backdrop for myself and perhaps a lot of people tuned in is like we became parents in lockdown, like back in peak pandemic mode. So it's just an interesting like time in history to become a parent, and also like the world's going through an interesting growing pain, we'll call it. And I think my favorite conversation to have, or for people to maybe even have with themselves or their family, is just what worked before and isn't working now, or what have we not been able to do that maybe now we can. So as an example, I remember when we first had our son, I basically just like took a lunch break every day for the first few months. I worked from home at that point. Still do a lot of the time, but I just like paused the business for like 2 hours midday to kind of go report back to family land with our newborn and just be like, okay, where are we at? How are we doing? And Emily and I would just check in on that. Whereas, that was 3 years ago now. I no longer do that, but I would say every 2, 3-ish months, I literally have a document on my laptop. It's a keynote deck. I like made a presentation for myself, and it's just a template of a 7-day calendar. And every 2, 3 months, I look at it and I'm like, okay, cool. Let's look and see what's needed here. And it's a matter of like, oh, I used to do this on Mondays. That doesn't even happen on Mondays anymore. Or perfect story as an example. Last winter, a few months ago, I discovered that there was a family skate day, middle of Wednesdays. And so for $5, you could just go skating as a family. And I was like, Wednesdays, I have a lot of meetings that day. And getting like my business brain on, like, I don't know, it's a Wednesday. I probably shouldn't go skating with our son. Then I went once. Like, this is amazing. Plus, now that I'm in this business where I'm like contributing to the lives of entrepreneurial dads, not that it's like it counts for work, but it's important that I'm actually in experiences like that. And I realized it was worth it to adjust Wednesdays for 3 months this past winter. So on Wednesdays, Emily and I decided that we'd adjust the day a bit, adjust the rest of the week a bit, so that I could take Koa skating, which was kind of like a 2 hour window out of the workday to make that happen. But why I did it is because this was a free family skate and no one else actually went. So Koa and I had an entire rink to ourselves every Wednesday. And I went with one of my dad buddies and his son. So it was like two dads, two little boys. No one else was on this rink. It was $5. Like to rent ice like that, it's like hundreds of dollars. So it was a moment like that where I felt like, oh, I think we're kind of winning at life in this moment because we have a rink to ourselves. We were teaching our little guys to skate. They were like, they didn't know how to skate. So we would go and just do dad life with them, and they'd like fall and tumble and giggle and cry and all this stuff. But that only came from thoughtful looking at, huh, does this work? Can this work? How does this work? And I also know on like a practical level, let's logistically do this as a couple and figure it out. But on a mortality level, I know that I'm never going to be able to do that again. Like we're literally moving homes now. We won't be near that arena. Our little guy's going to be a year older. Our friends might be moving too. That is done forever in that current form of which Wednesday skate time was this past year.
Mm. And I want to mention that you're also Canadian, so you're doing your duty, right?
Yes,
As a
yes.
Canadian to teach your
Getting the
three-year-old how to
service
skate.
hours.
It's a requirement.
Yeah.
So I hear. So that story is, I think that's the crux of how do you choose? How do you intentionally create time to literally like form memories for your children, with your children, of you, right? That one of the things that my husband says, and he has been like since we had kids, it has been one of his mantras, is that, he has listened to and read books um, of people saying over and over, when they die, they don't wish that they worked more. No one ever
Yeah.
wishes that they worked more on their deathbed. Everyone, especially, I think for him, it was especially men, who worked their lives away basically and never
Yeah.
had a relationship with their kids. That is their biggest regret. And for him, it's interesting because I know like your ethos too, right? Is always like you have this really beautiful way of like pre-eulogizing things. You're like, how is this going to matter at the end of my life, right? And
Yeah.
you have this really interesting forward view like that. And Adam does that too with parenting,
Mm,
right? That he sees like
mm,
he's never wanted to work 80 hours a week or 60 hours a week and be away. Right. It's
yeah.
always been about, for us, it's always been about balance in that way as well, that
Yeah.
we're here. We're here for the birthdays. We're here for the holidays. We're here for, the big moments in our kids' lives and the small moments in our kids' lives as
Mm,
well.
yeah.
Able to, he takes
Right.
them to their doctor's appointments.
Mm,
I mean, he's just very consciously, intentionally involved.
yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing from you as well, right? And it's creating a different relationship with this generation of kids that we
Yeah.
have, our little Gen Alphas, I think.
Well, I had a conversation literally 2 hours ago with a friend, and we were just commenting on, we both kind of aren't super traditional with how we've gone through life and career and business and building families and stuff. We haven't perfectly followed the like ABCDE approach that maybe would be in the How to Build a Life book, but we both just asked each other. He asked me this question. He's like, well, like, what is the luxury? Like, is the luxury staying home when your kids are young? Is the luxury getting to like have a really wicked career? Is the luxury having supports in place so that when your kids are little or at any stage that like you have time solo as just an individual, as a parent, as a partner. It's like, what is the luxury? And there's no right answer, but I think it was a fascinating conversation because it's probably a little bit or a whole lot different for everyone. But I think it's a sweet question to be asking. Like, to me, what's the luxury? And like, am I actually designing life in the direction of aiming to, I guess, have our cake and eat it too, rather than, oops, we just like ate cake for 10 years and didn't even know what we were eating and why we are eating it. And oh my gosh, our kids are 15 and whoa, like, so I think at times I'm ruthlessly intentional, probably sometimes to a fault, like, oops, got over intentional. Like, just why don't you just do life, bro? But these questions I think are really fun and meaningful to ask ourselves, whether it's what does Wednesday have to be defined as, or what is the luxury, or not to be morbid, but like, okay, let's say we had 60 days left on the life clock. Now what? What do we want to do that maybe we haven't done, or what do we want to do less of that we've been doing too much of? Questions like that. So I've always been a question geek.
Mm. And okay, so on that, one of the questions that I really love. So I love the that question of, if you only had X many days to live, like what's important to you? Um, but the way that I really enjoy thinking about that question is rather than like 60 days or even 1 year, right? If I had 1 year to live, I'm stopping working and kids are getting pulled out of school and we're going to travel the world and make all the
Yeah.
memories we possibly can. Right? That's I mean
Yeah.
that's the honest answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's like, okay, there's not balance in that because it's like I think a lot of people in our generation feel that way too, right? Like
Yeah.
the experiences in the family is more important.
Yeah.
But if I had only 10 years left to live, right? What do I
Mm-hmm.
do with those 10 years?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's
That
really interesting to
requires
me.
a whole different exercise of thinking. That's cool. Yeah, because 10 years is long, but it's short.
Hmm.
But like not a lot of life is in there, but like tons of life is in there. And that's that's powerful.
Yeah, because if it's 525,600 minutes
Yeah.
in one
Yeah.
year, right, you've got about 5.2 million minutes left in
Yeah.
10 years, right? So it's a lot of minutes, but like you
Right.
said, at the same time, 10 years can just snap by if you're not paying attention.
Yeah. Well, and sort of reframing those in different terms. Like maybe people have heard the idea of like you get 18 summers with your kids. I mean, do with that what you choose, but there's concepts like that out there. But as you just said, let's say you have 10 years left to live. And if you sort of pick some kind of mile marker, let's say it's, I don't know, someone's birthday in your family each year. And maybe on that birthday every year, it's just some random tradition that you all have like a certain kind of ice cream and you have like one cone of it. Well, that means like you have 10 cones remaining. And you could literally eat 10 cones of ice cream today. You'd probably feel a little crappy after, but it's like that's that's not a lot. But over 10 years, if we aren't mindful, like a decade can feel like an eternity, or a decade can just blaze by and we missed it.
Hmm.
I keep saying to my wife that, and I've had conversations like this with you over the past few years since we've come to know one another. It's just sometimes I feel like I've overdone it on the family front, not trying to get some dad award, but overdone it on the family front in the sense of like took my eye off the business ball at times. It's like, oops, right. Yep, gotta do that. But it's such a sneaky little balancing act because there's been a lot of days in the last almost 4 years since becoming a dad where I do kind of play that thought out in my mind of if this were like my last month alive, I'd kind of want to spend a lot of my days like I am right now. Like be with them, be with the kids, build cool things, connect with friends and family in a capacity. But again, you don't want that to be the way you do every day of life because sometimes you might get spun up in the intoxication of let's just skydive and pull the kids out of school and let's just like, you know what? Let's burn all our money in the backyard and make a statement. Like, whoa, 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 hang on. So I just think it's really rewarding and profoundly cool to ask, like, am I going too deep in one area or not enough? And a thing that I've developed mainly with the dads that I work with is this idea that people may find helpful whether they are a parent or not or want to be one, and whether the kids are in diapers or are in university. So the concept is the five fires. And the five fires that the dads and I discuss and work around are yourself, your marriage, your kids, your village, and your business. And that's a big thing that guides us with the group of guys that I'm developing. It's all we got to do is focus on the five fires. We've talked about it enough that we're pretty confident almost every speck of our lives will fit into one of those five fires. And to just tend to them or take a look and notice which ones need tending to me has been pretty eye opening.
Ooh, I love that. Because in mom world, we tend to think about spinning plates or juggling balls, right? Like
Very, very different
can't
image. Yeah.
right, can't drop one, keep your plates spinning. And that's very stressful,
Yeah.
truly, right? When you think of it that like I can't let anything drop. And to think about pending a fire instead, there's there's something so much more like relaxing about that. And at the same time, you get it. You're like, "Oh, yeah, like this one, it needs we gotta put some more wood on the fire. It needs some room to breathe, right? Get some air going
Yeah.
through there. And, maybe this one's like burning super hot right now." And you're like, "Ooh, that's fun." Like, "Oh, wait, but it's eating up a lot of fuel for the moment,
Yeah.
right? We gotta spread it out a little bit." That's such a good analogy. I love it. But truly, I am like I'm not stealing it because it's yours, but I'm going to like quote you on it at some point because
well,
it's beautiful.
well, thank you. And I mean, that came from, I had probably, I don't know, 45, 50 interviews with entrepreneurial dads in the last year. Basically, a conversation around like, what do you need? What is important to you? What is a struggle? What is going awesome? Not because I'm some therapist or something, but it's just, hey, entrepreneurial dads, what do you need? Let's talk about it. And from those conversations, common themes, patterns, tones in all the conversations were in those areas. And then because I just like to make things that are kind of meaningful and fun and cool and unique, I'm like, okay, well, I actually initially called them the five investments, and because it still applies, but the five investments, it felt kind of heady. It's like, better than most. That is like, it's an intellectual exercise a lot of the time, even though it can be much more. But then I shifted it to, well, I like nature. I like being outside. I like acoustic guitars and just the humanity that kind of comes when you're sitting around a bonfire and telling stories, having snacks, whatever. So the five fires was the creation mainly from all these guys just sharing stories, sharing experiences, sharing struggles. And every time I mention the five fires, it seems to really resonate with folks because there's like beauty in fire, but we're also all very much aware like it has to be deeply respected, otherwise we're in trouble.
Mhm. Oh, it's so yeah, that's so good. The thing that I was, the fact that marriage is one of them as well. For any parents who are married, that and I want to like shout out to Emily too, your wife, because she's also an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right, and so there's this other balance between the 2 of you of, like, you both run businesses with lots of different arms and legs and pieces, and
Yeah.
so there like, for me, my husband isn't an entrepreneur, but he works, a great job. He gets to work from home, as well, so,
Mm.
like, we've been a parenting team for,
Yeah.
especially since he started working from home in like 20, maybe 2017. It's
Hmm.
pretty early. So he's been working
Classic
from,
edition.
right? I know. I
Yeah.
know. Um, I started working from home originally in 2011 when Clara was born, when my oldest was
Mm,
born. And
yeah.
so I went back into the office when I was an advisor
Yeah.
for my old firm. I went back into the office. And so that, we had to rebalance, kind of do that whole thing, rejuggle everything.
Mm.
Um, but then for the last, 3.5 years, I've mostly been working from home again.
Right.
And so being able to, like you said, like tend to these different pieces together, that has been really different. And one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about today is this. I truly, truly feel like the dads, like especially millennial dads right now, because we're the generation that's really
Right.
changing the script in a lot of ways on what it
Yeah.
means to connect with your kids. I think the Gen X and younger Gen X also started shifting.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'm seeing it especially with dads stepping up and doing more,
Mm.
and moms also. We're like, it's like moms have been stepping up and doing more, working a lot, business
Yeah.
owners, financially contributing in a lot of ways to the household.
Yeah.
And in previous generations, moms were doing that and still doing 90+% of all the housework and childcare.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that,
Respect.
right? Like bananas.
Mm.
I couldn't do that.
Mhm.
I guess I could if I had to, but it would, I mean, like the burnout would be just like
Yeah.
insane. And so what I'm noticing is that a lot of the couples that I've seen be able to like come together in entrepreneurship are the ones where things are so much more equal
Mm.
on all fronts. So like you taking Koa to skate every
Yeah.
Wednesday, right? That
Yeah.
that would not have been a thing
Right.
20 or 30 years ago, right? It
Yeah.
would have been mom figuring out how to do that
Yeah.
stuff in a lot of cases.
Right.
And so this, like having a super involved partner, having men shift the way that they're showing up, wanting to be really present fathers in their children's lives, while also, supporting their wives to be, as bold and bright as they're meant to be, right? It feels like a new dynamic, and it feels like to me that you're part of that group as well. That it's like this is being part of the family is like making sure everyone in the family is thriving.
Yeah. I don't have the exact numbers, but I remember someone sent me an article speaking to that, what you're mentioning. It's like they were basically saying in the article that currently this is the generation where kids will experience like a record high in just hours with their dads. Now, who knows how, how high of a quality those hours are necessarily, but it's like dads have the ability a lot of the time to like choose to be around a bit more, or the fact that we can work remote a lot of the time, that wasn't even a thing years ago. And I mean, I sort of feel like I'm benefiting immensely from it, because I remember being a kid thinking there was like two stay-at-home dads back in the day when I was a kid, and they'd like pick up my friends, that their children at school and stuff. I'm like, "Where's dad here? Why's there a dad? That's cool." And I remember when I learned about this guy, I was like, "Oh, I want to be a stay-at-home dad someday." And I'm not fully, but it's an era where like transferring kids throughout the day, and like, okay, partner, you go here, okay, partner, you go here, okay, this kid, like, not that you're just taxi cabbing your kids around for pure logistics, but like I think back to one of my former seasons of Wednesdays. This was like 2 years ago now, but back then, how I spent my Wednesday is I worked probably like 5, 6 hours of that day. Emily worked the other sort of 4 or 5 hours of that day. We both were leading our communities, which were virtual communities. I work in this home studio space in the basement. She works in a workspace on the top floor of our home. And on those Wednesdays, there was such a rhythm of like, okay, so Blake's gonna start the work day. Em's gonna be with the kiddos. And then actually no, I woke up the kids, did like the breakfast thing and stuff. And then it was over to Em with the kids. I started the work thing. And then Em got into work mode and I got back with the kids. But like we were texting throughout the day of like setting up and organizing. And the interesting thing is one of my team members was in one of Emily's masterminds. And so then like that one team member, she was sort of like moving through our family day with us, but it was also in both of our work worlds in different capacities. And on those Wednesdays, I just thought, wow, we are either crazy or this is just super cool. Like this is a sweet, extremely intentional, sometimes wildly stressful groove that we've chosen. So I don't know where I went with that, Hannah. But yes, dads, a few more hours on the family clock in this era, it seems, if they want to.
Yes. So that was beautiful and perfect, and such a perfect lead into like how are you so in the community that you are building and curating and supporting and lifting up, how are you seeing shifts start to happen? Because, this has been, well, when did you start it? How long has it been growing now? It's been a little bit.
Yep, a little bit. So I turned 39 on January 31st. And on my 39th birthday, I rounded up a group of guys in my life who were entrepreneurial dads. And I said, hey guys, for my birthday, I'm inviting you to a Zoom event for half an hour. I've got this idea, I've got this hunch, I got this vision. I want to declare it publicly as a birthday present to myself. And so Jan 31, a few months ago now, is when I rounded up those guys and said, hey guys, I've had a passion project serving entrepreneurial dads for the last 3, 4 years. A few guys keep borderline bullying me, saying, why is this just like a cute little pet project? Why don't you make this much more significant for us and for your work? So, okay, I'm going to explore that. And so I said on my 39th birthday, I'm going to take this year to grow this community, explore what this is like, go beyond just like a passion project. And then when I turn 40, we're going to meet back on Zoom. And I'm basically going to decide, was that just a fun process? And I'll do a little bit more of it. Or am I literally going to devote my 40s to serving entrepreneurial dads as like the main part of my work? So at the time of this recording, where are we at? July. So that conversation was in January. Did a lot of research through February, March, launched it in April. And the goal is to have 100 entrepreneurial dads in this group by my 40th birthday. Currently, we've got 10 guys. So a long way to go and a short way to go. But I can expand on much more of what goes on inside and all that jazz shortly. But yeah, that's the timeline on when it began, why, and where we're at currently and where we're going.
Well, I love, love, love this conversation because what I have noticed too, like also leading spaces and leading groups and um an expansive CEO, but then in X squared, working individually with individuals and couples in those two worlds, it's very, very interesting because I find, partially because I'm a woman too, but I find that there are a lot of spaces for women who are entrepreneurs and who are moms and who want
Yeah.
to bring intentionality to all sides of them. I feel
Yeah.
like there can always be more, but I feel like there's more of that for women than there is for men. And
Mm.
so the men that what I find is that the men that I work with in X squared, because of who I am, because I talk about the emotional side of money, because I talk about the spiritual side of money, because I talk, like I bring all of that into all of my marketing. The men that I tend to work with in X squared, whether they're single or partnered, tend to be very heart centered as well. And they
Yeah.
want, they're like you. They're like my husband. They want to be present in their children's lives if they're
Yeah.
parents. Um, and they're not, when they're looking for a business mastermind, mostly what they get is here's your strategy.
Yeah.
Here's like how you build your business to, you know, $1 million or $5 million or $50 million a year. And, the it's all about like the grind and the hustle. And it's very little about how do you show up with your family? How do you get to be present? How do
Yeah.
you have balance between that? And so the fact that you're like creating this space for entrepreneurial dads where like the point is, I love that, the five fires, right? You're tending to all areas of your life and you get to choose which areas you're going to focus on, which fires you're going to tend most mm, you know regularly. You get to do that. You get to choose, but it's so holistic and inclusive, and I just don't feel like I see a lot of that out there. Is that what,
Mm.
and when you did all your research, right? Because you're so good at that. Whenever you have an idea, you're like, I'm gonna go talk to 100 people about this. I'm like, dang, Blake is on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like the Charlie Brown therapist, set up the little booth and just like therapy. And I just sit at the booth and learn a lot. Old school for sure.
And so, yeah, when you're doing that, like, were you hearing that from others? I mean, is my observation like completely out of line because I'm just not there? Or were
Yeah.
they saying the same thing, that there wasn't really a space for that they could find?
Well, for starters, perhaps you experience this too, but I sometimes feel like everyone's doing the stuff I'm doing, not from a copycat point of view, but I think just it's like when I think of me as a speaker, I feel like everyone's a speaker. Everyone speaks, everyone does, but I think it's because like Facebook ads just know that, and like Google searches know that, and YouTube interests show that. So sometimes I think right now it's like there's just a ton of groups, there's a ton of worlds, a ton of spaces for dudes to gather and connect and like work on just their priorities in their life. Then I need to remind myself, oh, hang on, if I just go to like any typical room of people and I talk to 10 of them, mm, nine are probably like, huh, dads connecting and like talking about what. So, yes, in all my research interviews with these guys, there was a definite theme of there's not really anything like this for dads, especially entrepreneurial ones, where you're kind of in that juggle and it's got a unique layer that maybe isn't present if you don't run your own business. And I think what else I found through the conversations is in some of the men's groups, in the men's work world, there's these two themes that are kind of prominent. One is a lot of those groups are faith based, which is awesome. Though a lot of them begin from like let's say a church community. So you got to go through a faith door to find that like community of dudes, and that's awesome. Though for some, they won't find that door if that's not a community that they're in. And then the other thing that I learned is there's a lot of groups of guys, and I think it tilts to the like alpha male sort of side of things where it's like just dudes like beating their chest, yelling, like moving through trauma, going into the woods, screaming at a tree. And that's cool. I've done some of that stuff. It's wildly powerful and impactful. Though I'm neither of those two things that I just mentioned. And I wanted to build a space that was sort of a hybrid of both. And the way that I sort of describe it is it is for a word I like to use is it's sort of like sentimental dudes, like guys that are driven and ambitious and up to big things, though do cry at Pixar movies and like do want to cherish the everyday of this flying fast journey known as parenthood. So I think in the group, now that we've been going for a few months, what's cool is that guys mention when they come to our gatherings, which is pretty much all online currently, they sort of say that this is the only thing in their calendar that like connects them to their mortality and to their like main things in life beyond business. One guy said it's like a forcing function, meaning if you were given some awful news about some disease you get, well, that's a forcing function to prioritize some stuff. So this group, it's kind of like a few times a month, we have a forcing function on our calendar to connect and gather and focus and tend to, as we say, the five fires, which sometimes only one or two of those get focused on, which is usually like business and maybe something else. And the rest kind of get reflected back to you at turning points in life or at tragic points in life.
Mm. And so what you're saying is let's tend to those fires on a consistent basis, not just when a family member dies or when a close friend dies or, when you have a brush, usually it's going to be around death, right? You have a brush with death, right?
Yeah.
That's not, it's not the only time we're allowed to reflect. And I think that's another, if anyone goes back and listens to either of our prior conversations, that's another thing that um, you're so gifted at eliciting in a group, right? Is this sense of, I'm going to say sentimentality. I think that's a really good word that you used, but not over sentimentality, right?
Yeah.
It's like the emotional connection with future you
Yeah.
without it being, again, overly sentimentalized, overly, um almost like, to that point again of like, okay, if we're gonna just focus on that, then we're gonna let all the other fires burn out and just focus on this one, right?
Yeah.
You create this really special balance in that conversation while also being like, hey, this matters.
Hmm.
It matters. Like when you do thank you live every year, it matters. It
Yeah.
matters to have gratitude. It matters
Yeah.
to tell the people that you're grateful for that you're grateful for them.
Right.
And I think you said it at the beginning when we started recording, but it's like it really truly is bringing these different pieces of things that you've been working on for years and years, and like kind of like they're finding a place together here in this what
Yeah.
you're doing now.
Well, and thank you for all those perspectives from you because I feel like you've always got a heck of a mirror up with everyone you work with and connect to and have conversations with. Though one thing that I've sort of noticed in my own development is I think for a long time I tilted pretty heavy over to the feminine, which is great. Though a lot of my work it revolves around appreciation, gratitude, relationships, connecting, and that's powerful. That said, sometimes action gets missed if that's the focus. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's to put us into a state and to give us ideas and insights. Now, how do we execute on it so it actually leads to impactful outcomes and results, either in family or marriage or business or whatever? And so I want to share this super practical element to what I'm up to with dads, which has nothing to do with just dads, but I think it's where there's a big bridge between your work and mine. And it's something that a listener might go, oh, it's really simple. I'm going to do a little bit of that or a lot. And here's what that is. So, the genesis of the work that I'm doing with entrepreneurial dads, it came from the fact that when our little guy Koa was born, when he turned 1 month, you have a baby 1 month, like every month is this mega milestone. You like take a picture and it's like you freak out, like, oh my gosh, 1 month, 2 months. So when he turned 1 month, I made this little video on Facebook and I called it Koa News. And I have a microphone and I got like a Starbucks sort of coffee cup sleeve and I wrote Koa News on it. And I interviewed Koa on camera at 1 month, asking him, like, so what have you learned? Like, you've been around for a month now. Obviously, he says nothing. He's just like spitting up and stuff. But every month I did a Koa News episode. And I did it more for me. And I did it because it presenced me, the parent, to the journey of parenthood. And then I noticed that I was starting to fall off a little bit. Like, oh shoot, I missed one of the months. Oh darn. And then I'd start being like, oh, welcome to Co News, where we're doing the last 4 months. And so when we had our daughter's summer, it's almost like when she was born, there was this like sticker on her forehead. She looked up and it was literally like she just sent me this sign that said, don't fall off that practice. That is awesome. I want that. My brother wants that. You're going to want that. Mom's going to want that. Like, don't slack, dad. And so I started this group of other dads for accountability to do that. And we called it Dads Making History. And Dads Making History was once a month, we record an audio message or a video message from us, the dad, to our child at their current age and stage. We share a story or a memory or a moment or a lesson. And the purpose was we then send it to them way into the future. Maybe even it's a leave behind when we're gone. And so we make a message in the present to gift it to our kids in the future, which is then a legacy piece from our and their past. And I say this because if once a month, and you're inspired to, if once a month you were to make a video or an audio, not just written, because there's something about like hearing a voice, especially people who lose their parents. They say like the thing that they forget first is the sound of their voice. That's why they cherish like the last voicemail. But if you want to make a mini message to your kid once a month and just tell them a story or say a thank you for something or just let them know what you are noticing about their life at that stage, oh my gosh, it is such a powerful way to slow down parenthood, but also capture like the most raw special pieces of that stage. And because of technology now, like if I wanted my grandpa to do this or even my dad, it's not happening. But now we could make these time capsules, these, you know, dad's making history, mom's making history, whatever, quite easily. But it's the easiest thing to do, and it's the easiest thing not to do. So that's where this whole dad thing began from, is just getting a group of dudes together once a month to make messages for their kids. And then it evolved from there to much bigger. And then the 5 fires happened and yada, yada. I just wanted to share that with you because that's something that people think of doing when they got 1 month left on the clock. Whereas, what if it became a practice and you had some accountability in place where you can make this lifelong legacy piece for your kids? And Hannah, with your clients, that's literally the conversation you're having all the time about like, what do you want to do now to set up for the future? And what do you want to leave behind? And I'm talking about the exact same conversation, but it's not even so much like wealth on the finance side. It's like wealth on the wisdom, the story, the it's not life insurance, it's life assurance that like your parents are with you forever if you want them to be.
Oh my God, that's so good. Yes. Yeah. Legacy. I have that question literally on like my questionnaire and, different places I have my clients like I ask them, what does legacy mean to you? It's a very open-ended
Mm,
question on purpose because it's, for most people, they're like, it's not about money. It's not about money. I would like to leave something to my kids, right? That would be
yeah.
great to make their life a little easier. But what I really think legacy means is, and it's something like that,
Mm,
the imprint that I'm leaving on the world, what my kids will, remember and take from me when I'm gone, what will matter to them.
yeah.
Kindness, love, acceptance,
Right.
acknowledgement, all of those things. That's the legacy that creates is,
Mm,
like you said, it's more important than the money
yeah.
coming from a financial advisor.
Right.
It's it's more
Absolutely.
important. It's more important. Um, Money gets messy when people die. I've
Mm,
experienced it. I've seen it happen with clients. And it's sad. And it's not, like that if you're not intentional about the legacy of relationship that you're leaving, the money is just a messy side effect.
Yeah.
So you're helping on both fronts, really, right? I love that life assurance. Um side actually it actually helps. It creates better results on the money side as well. And what
Right.
is what's happening there logically and tangibly.
Well, and I don't know because currently I'm fortunate to still have both my parents, though, like you mentioned, your daughter, Clara, she's 13 right now, or she's 11, or
13. She's my 13-year-old.
so this whole like making messages now for our kids to have later, what comes to my mind is I have these visions of, okay, your daughter, Clara, currently 13. There's probably some ideas, insights, lessons, observations you're having as mom right now that she's probably oblivious to and doesn't really care, and that's fine. But you're like seeing it, noticing it. You might forget it in a few years. And when Clara's like 47, maybe on a flight somewhere or making some big decision, and if you're not around anymore, hopefully you are, but like to access just like perspective and soundboarding from a parent, but not have that like in the moment, mom, like leave me alone. It's like if I get advice from my parents now, it's just the easiest thing to not listen to, even if it's great advice. And if Google says it, like, oh yeah, it's good stuff. It's really good. But I think it's such a cool conversation to get to be in your work and in my world where what can we sort of secretly like leave behind for our kids now,
Mm.
but design infrastructure around that so we actually do it.
Mm. I love it. I love it, Blake. And I would love for you to share so if anyone's listening to this conversation and they're like, that sounds awesome, I need to know more, or my husband would love this, or my brother would love this, or anyone, my dad would love this, right? Who who is this for and how do they get to you?
Yeah. Well, it's currently called Dads Making History, and it's for entrepreneurial dads. What does that mean? It doesn't mean you have to have your own business. It just means, you've got that drive, that ambition, that desire to be creative and entrepreneurial in the way that you do life, do career, do family. And there's a couple ways to learn about it. Right now, there's just a very simple page at dadsmakinghistory.com. Just a simple little video there for me telling you a little bit more. Then you can just like leave contact info. We can connect. I can share more info with you in that way. So dadsmakinghistory.com. And then if you just want to reach out to me directly, my Instagram is at Blake Fly, and my website is blakefly.com, and my email is blake@blakefly.com. And I like connecting with people one on one. I mean, in the future, I might regret saying that, but for now, I adore just find me, talk to me. Let's be humans together in the times of AI.
Mm. I love that. And all of that information is going to be in the show notes. If anyone is looking for it, we'll make it super easily accessible. And having been in community with you for more than 2 years now, and like I said a couple of times, having you on the podcast 3 different times now, being on your 1,000 lives,
Yeah,
right? We did that too. All the things we've done together, we've done a lot of stuff.
I know.
Um, I'm so thankful. I'm so happy to share time with you anytime we get to have a conversation. And I always find it to be I get good reminders from you. I know the audience really, really enjoys it. So I am sure, and I'm going to stamp this, I'm sure that I'll have you on a fourth time whenever something new is coming up and we need to talk about it. But for now, thank you. Thank you for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Likewise, always a blast. And thank you for the human design contribution and the high care you give to all interactions you're ever a part of. It's a joy.
Mm, thank you. And if you have any questions, if you're listening and you have questions or if something resonated, I love to hear from you. Send me a note, send me a DM on any of the platforms we're connected on. Send me an email at Hannah, Hannah, at expansiveceo.com. And if you heard anything that you're like, I need to know more about that, get a hold of Blake and or let me know if we need to have another conversation ASAP. We can do that too. It's open. This is my podcast. I can do whatever I want. So I love it. Thanks, Blake. We will
See you later.
see you again soon. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe. And again, if anything resonated with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Hannah, HANNAH, at expansiveceo.com and tell me about it. And if you're ready for your greatest expansion, you can find ways to work with me at expansiveceo.com and at x2wealthplanning.com. That's X, the numeral 2, wealthplanning.com. So until next time, remember that there is enough, you are enough, and your birthright in this lifetime is to be expansive.